Hello fellow woodworkers and welcome to this week's edition of the Garage Workshop, and this week we're going to be working on
a new extension system for my workshop Workbench.
Roll the intro. So fellow woodworkers, a while ago I did a few videos. I'll put a link in the description to the playlist on making my new workbench, which I have to say I'm really pleased with. And as you've seen over the last few weeks, I've made some little additions to the bench. First of all, I put in a router table for my router, and I've just done a pocket hole jig, which was my last video, again link in the description. But when I created this bench, I did create it with a sort of extendable base which is actually stored in the bottom of the workbench, and the plan was to come up with something that would allow me to use that extended sort of space to make this workbench larger. Now I cut the piece of plywood and I sort of stored it under there, and I thought I'll wait until I've had a bit of a better idea on exactly how I want to build it in, to incorporate it. So I've now got an idea on how I would like to use that base. Now it's not going to be permanently fixed, because I could permanently fix it on this side, but again, if I do, then I'm losing quite a lot of space, because the piece of wood underneath, the other top, is exactly the same size as the top of the workbench. So if I put it on there, I'm losing a good sort of chunk of workable space. But of course the disadvantage is any way of attaching it on here means it has to be able to be removed easily. And the second consideration is, although it's thin plywood, it's 12mm plywood, it has still got quite a significant piece of weight to it. So anything I do has got to be able to take the weight of this other sheet of plywood, and then on top of that, the weight of whatever project I put on the top of it. So I've got a couple of ideas on how I'd like to do this. Let me talk them through now. Okay, so my first idea is actually based around this side of the bench. As you can see, I deliberately left it open because I wanted to spend some time thinking about exactly how I was going to do this. And obviously it's never been my plan to have all these internal pieces of wood that support the drawers on show. So whatever I do today as part of this, I do want to sort of encapsulate this in some way, either by putting a piece of wood over it, or by doing something, some struts or some braces that would help me. But I've essentially fallen into two ways of thinking, two ideas. The first one is to have some sort of folding concertina hinge system that would attach here, that would allow me to sort of fold it up fairly flat, and when I got the table out, I could literally just rest the table on the top of it. It would require putting an additional piece of wood here, sort of like a rest for the top really, that would butt up against here, so it would maintain the same level as the worktop. So a sort of concertina fold out idea. Now there are strengths and disadvantages of that idea. The first one is obviously it would be easily storable, it would be flattened in, but of course then you do run the risk of having different pieces of wood going into it. You're going to potentially rely on the strength of the hinges to do it. So there are sort of pros and cons for that idea. The second idea, which is the one at the moment, I'm going to be honest, I'm leaning towards, is very similar to what I had on my last workbench. And it would essentially be putting in a sort of, for all intents and purposes, a set of doors that would fix either side. They would then pull out here, and it would allow me to sit the workbench on top. Now the advantage of that is, A, it neatens this up, which makes my life a lot easier, because that was one of the things I wanted to do. So that's the first advantage. The second advantage is, because of the way it would be connected here with a longer, deeper sheet of plywood, it would give more strength when the sheet came out. So that's the second advantage. And actually potentially a third advantage is if I had something on here that's sort of shut in the middle, a sort of system of doors, if you like, it would also allow me to put something on it. So maybe I could put my spanners on it, or hang saws on it, or put some of my measures on it. It would give me additional options in terms of storage on the bench. So a sort of win-win all way round. The only thing that slightly puts me off about doing this is the gap I'm going to have here. So the maximum depth that I'm going to be able to have this. So the disadvantage of doing that is obviously I've only got this gap for the door to open on both sides, which is actually only probably going to give support to just under half of this unit, which again isn't going to be very strong. I could have a system here where I have a sort of big long door that comes out on a diagonal, which would also potentially work. So I'm going to have a little bit of a look at the measurements and just have a little bit of a play of what things I need to do in order to get the most rigidity in this, because what I've got to do is provide support for not just this but the projects that go on the top. So a sort of one door system that I could open here, where I could potentially put a strut in there that would cover this up, and it would give me a good amount of strength. Obviously it would need significant hinges here, or I could do the same thing from the other side. But let's have a little bit of a look around some of the ideas.
In an attempt to keep down the variability of my videos, I've decided to split this one into two shorter videos because it was far too long as one whole video. So as I've mentioned in other previous videos, I'm spending a lot more time measuring before I cut. Now there's two reasons for that. The first obvious one is you don't want to get it wrong, but the second one is also to use up scrap wood that I've got. If I've got accurate measurements, then I'm able to look very carefully at the scrap wood that I've got left over. So I did check this a couple of times, and just one thing to point out, I was really pleased with how straight it was. I was really surprised.
Okay, so I've had a good measure up, and I've got a drop of about 75 centimetres. And obviously the width of this is a metre, which I knew because that's the way I'd cut it. So thinking about what I'm planning on doing, I think it would work. I don't think there's an issue with that. But what I am concerned about is the amount of weight that is going to be on this side. Now again, I don't think that's an issue in the fact that I can use high grade or heavy duty hinges, but then what I will have a slight problem with if I do use heavy duty hinges is I was only planning to use 12mm ply for this, and obviously putting hinges into 12mm ply, you're going to need a bigger screw than the 12mm to ensure that you've got the rigidity. So what I might actually do is put like a batten all the way around the edge, a sort of picture frame, if you will, just so it doesn't look like it's just on one side to hide the hinges. And the other thing that I thought was whether there's a possibility that when this swings out, so if you imagine it's going to sort of be like this with the hinge at this side, when this swings out to the height, the depth that I want it to be, it's going to need to either be secured in place by the top, or what's more likely is it needs to be secured here. And I'm just wondering if there's a way that I can build something into here, because I've got the space behind where I could potentially slide something out to attach it if I cut it on the sort of right, the correct angle. So that's also something that I can do. And I've also got the opportunity, of course, of attaching something there that will swing out and hook on. But I think the first thing to do is to get this sort of door made, then get the sort of frame around it, and then I can worry about it. And I've actually got a piece of plywood which I showed in the recent video I did on the Evolution circular saw. I've got a nice piece of plywood that I found lying around, which I think is going to fit. So let's break that out, let's cut it down to size, and then let's see how it looks.
So this is the piece of board, as you just heard me say, and actually it's not in too bad a condition. There's a couple of like tape marks and there's a bit of dirt on it, but nothing really that would stop me using it. So again, accurate measurements all the way through, and this time I knew I was going to use my Evolution circular saw, so I took particular effort in making sure that the lines were straight. Have to say, I do like this saw. I know they sent it to me and it was a product review, but I just think it's a really good saw. I'm on the lookout for a blade, so if anyone knows of a good one, just pop it in the comments. Just one thing I want to point out, you'll have just seen me cut this piece of wood with my Evolution circular saw, and as I mentioned, there's a link in the description. I've got an affiliate link for Evolution which I'll also put in there, but look at the quality of that cut. Hopefully you can see that it's absolutely flawless, and this is a circular saw. It's not, you know, a plunge saw. It's a circular saw, track circular saw, but I am just really impressed with the quality. I mean, obviously there's a little bit of sort of tear out, and there will be with this sort of plywood, but I'm really impressed with that cut. I think that's a really good quality cut. So let's offer this up now and have a look and see if it's the right size, and then I think what we'll do is I'll start the frame on the outside. So let's offer it up, see how it looks. This was one of those builds which just evolved as it went. I started out with one very clear idea in my mind of how I wanted it to look, and by the end it was completely different to my original thought, which for me, and I'm sure you're the same if you build projects, it's actually half the fun of woodworking, is starting along a line and then considering what you're doing, looking for a sort of better outcome, and then changing it. And I know I do that a lot in my videos, but with this one it really sort of ebbed and flowed, which was fantastic. So when I'd finished knocking all this wood back and cutting it down, I was then ready to start the next stage. I was very conscious as well throughout the whole of this process to just keep offering the wood up to make sure it fitted, and as you can see here, fitted perfectly. Okay, so having cut that, I'm now at the stage where I want to sort of do my edging strip, and I thought a lot about what to use, but I've got some pieces of broken off shiplap that I picked up from a skip. Now they're in various, you know, degrees of damage. As you can see, this one here has got quite a big chunk taken out of it, but I've got about 3 or 4 pieces that are this size, and I think if I run them through my table saw, it will give me the lengths that I need. I mean, this bit here on its own, if I use the good wood in it, I've got enough for that side, and I've got at least another 2 pieces that are this length. So I think rather than go out and buy a piece of strip wood, I think I'm going to use it. I know this is not what it's designed for, before anyone says in the comments, but it's off-cut shiplap. The price of wood at the moment, you'd be crazy not to use what you have lying around. So I think what I'm going to do is set up the table saw and cut some strips. Now my hinges are quite heavy duty sort of industrial hinges, and I'm picking these ones on purpose because I really feel that this door is going to have a lot of weight, and potentially if I use it in the future for storage, it's going to have even more weight. So in order to make sure that the hinges come properly on the door, if I measure the side of the hinge from the middle, I'm looking at I'm looking at basically 1.5 inches, about 38, 39 mil that the strip has got to be. So this wood being this big, I can easily, even though it's got sort of grooves in it, if I measure it from this side, I've got 80 mil of really nice wood that I can use there. So the plan is to put the table saw together. Our first thing I'm going to do is just cut a strip off. Now these are all factory edge, and obviously they are not, you know, 100% perfect, but if I can get this, at least get one side, one edge perfectly straight, then I'll just set the table saw up with a 38 mil strip, and I'll just run all these through. So let's do that now and see where we end up. This shiplap is actually really lovely wood. I don't know what the wood is. If you know, please put it in the comments. I did try and look it up, but obviously when you find wood like this in a skip, you don't know where it's come from, but it was really nice. It had a really strong smell, but I think that was the obviously the treatment that they've used in it, but it went through the table saw really nicely. And this is the first time that I've used this table saw since it was replaced by Evolution. I think it's the first time, and it cut an absolute treat. It just went through it like a hot knife through butter. But I suppose it has got a new blade, so I would expect it. The next thing to do, and the last thing in this week's video, is just the glue up. So I left it to dry overnight. It's a little bit colder at the moment. It took some while to dry, but got there in the end. So fellow woodworkers, that is the end of part 1 of this video on building an extension table for my workbench. If this is your first time at the channel, please can I ask you to subscribe, like and comment. If you are a regular viewer, thank you so much for your support, and also don't forget to like and comment. I'll catch you in part 2's video next week. Take care fellow woodworkers.